Continuing with discussion of trait theories of personality. Previously, we talked about Cattell and his 16 personality factors, and Eysenck with the 2 dimensions of neuroticism and extroversion. And now I'm going to talk about something that's referred to alternatively as the 5-factor model of personality, or sometimes just the Big 5 or the Big 5 model of personality. And so you can probably anticipate we'll be talking about 5 personality characteristics or factors, and this is largely associated with the researchers Costa and McCrae, although a lot of folks will apply this in research. A lot of folks will use these 5 factors or include these 5 factors in their investigations in psychology. And so, according to this model, we can describe personality by assessing a person's score using things like self-report instruments, surveys, questionnaires, a score on 5 dimensions. All right, you can think of these in general as traits. 5 dimensions, they're more like general dimensions. And so within this, sometimes it's hard to remember all 5 of these. There is a mnemonic, a trick for trying to remember the Big 5. And that is to think of the word ocean. Ocean, because it's O-C-E-A-N. You can think of those letters as standing for the 5 factors. So what's the first one? The O. What does the O stand for? Openness, or more completely, openness to experience. Openness to experience involves being open-minded, adventurous, engaging in cognitive exploration, creativity. If you are high in openness, if you get a high score in openness, you're someone where if you get a chance to go out to dinner with friends, you're going to want to go to a restaurant you've never been to before. You're going to be like, let's try something new. I want a new experience. I want to experience new things, try new things. I am going to appreciate things in a creative, accepting manner, so like go to a museum, you're not going to be like, well, what the heck is that? You're going to spend some time looking at whatever the artwork may be, looking at it and trying to figure out, okay, what could be the message here? Even if this is nothing like I've ever seen before, if this is not within my realm of familiarity, I still want to try to understand it. That's someone who's high in openness. Someone who's low in openness is just like, they're trying to find a place to eat. I'm going to go to the place I like. I'm going to go to the place I always go because I know I like it. That's more like being low in openness. Now, what does the C stand for in ocean? That would be conscientiousness. All right, folks, in this chapter, we've dealt with a lot of words that start with C and sound something like conscious. All right, so with Freud, we talked about conscious thoughts, and we talked about developing a conscience when you develop your superego. All right. Now we have conscientiousness in the Big 5. What is that? This is your degree of being responsible, dependable, stable over time. Your conscientious students are the ones who read ahead of time. They have like organized notebooks and things like that. They know when all their dates are. They don't regularly miss class. They're very responsible. They are taking things seriously, and they are putting in a considerable bit of effort. All right, it's kind of like they care. They care about the rules. They care about expectations. All right, someone who's low in conscientiousness, like, I don't care. I'm going to skip class. I'm not going to study. Or an employee, someone in a workplace, someone who's low in conscientiousness, they're late all the time. They don't follow the directions on the forms they're supposed to submit. That would be indicative of a low score in conscientiousness. All right, so we're ready for the E. The E in ocean. This word should sound familiar. Extroversion. Now, like Isaac, it is spelled with an A here in the textbook for the Big 5. I have seen extroversion with the O in different theories. All right, so extroversion, and it's very similar to the way I described it when I was talking about Isaac. And so that is being outgoing, talkative, the life of the party, wanting to getting your energy from being around people, being social interactions. If you have a low score on extroversion, we want to use the word introversion, but really it's low score on extroversion. Low score on extroversion, that's when you're more, you're not seeking out those social interactions. You are more individually focused, individual activities and things like that. All right, now, what do we get to? We're to A. The A, what does the A stand for? In ocean, that would be agreeableness. What does agreeableness sound like? You're kind, friendly, helpful type of behaviors, cooperative behaviors. And so, let's say you show up for a test and you forgot your Scantron form for an in-person test where you're required to have a Scantron form. You panic, you're like, oh no, I can't take this test, I didn't bring my Scantron. Person sitting next to you sees you panicking. Do you need a Scantron? I've got extra Scantrons, maybe because they're also conscientious. I've got extra Scantrons. Here, borrow this Scantron. That would be agreeable behavior. I like to think I engaged in agreeable behavior earlier today. I had to stop at Walgreens before coming to campus because I was out of some medicinal stuff. And I'm getting ready to leave, and I see this woman looking like she's struggling, and I just kind of look, and she says, "Do you know where they keep the denture cleaner?" And I said, "Well, honestly, I don't, because I don't use it, but I can help you find it." And I looked around, and sure enough, it was like bottom shelf where she couldn't see it, couldn't reach it. And so I went through it with her. I tried to make sure it was the right formula that she needed, and I said, "Here you go, ma'am." And then I left. I'm like, "Okay, there we go." And then as we're leaving, she's like, "Oh, you can get in front of me in line because you were so nice to me." I'm like, "Well, I'd hope everybody would be nice to you. Everybody would do that, right?" To me, I'm just like, that should be normal everyday behavior. Maybe that's an indication that I'm high in agreeableness, or at least I value agreeableness. And not to toot my own horn, I've had days where I have been very stressed, and maybe somebody might have thought I acted a little bit rude when I was rushing through Walgreens in a very stressed out day. I was having a good day where I had the time to exhibit agreeableness. Now, finally, ocean ends with an N. Now we have neuroticism. And this one, we talked about neuroticism before when we talked about Eysenck. This has to do with emotional instability. So if you are low in neuroticism, you are more emotionally stable. You can keep yourself together. You can be calm. You're high in neuroticism. You're tense. You're anxious. You're easily stressed out. You're high strung. So the person who freaks out about an upcoming deadline, they're probably higher in neuroticism. The person who's like, it's no big deal, we've got time to prepare, they're probably lower in neuroticism. Or you could say they're more on the stable end of the spectrum. All right, so you've got these big five. On each of these dimensions, you're going to have a particular score. So you're not going to get labeled as being a particular type of person with this model of personality. Instead, we'll talk about, well, what's your score? What's your level on this particular dimension? And in research, we can establish correlations or prediction. So we can say, okay, so the higher someone is in, say, agreeableness, the higher someone's score is on agreeableness, the higher or the lower they are on some other characteristic. So we have linked these 5 factors to all sorts of other relevant features that would be studied by psychologists. I know for a lot of my research, especially my educational research, we know that conscientiousness is predictive of lots of academic factors like academic success. Conscientiousness very strongly correlated with things like grades, performance, graduating, completing your program, being successful in graduate programs, things like that. Conscientiousness, definitely. Also, we can look at things like extroversion and see how well it predicts whether you go into a particular field. You can probably anticipate there are certain fields where extroversion would probably be correlated, would probably be linked in some way We've also seen people who study other sorts of characteristics. Like one area I'm in, I study academic entitlement, and a sense of entitlement. You feel like you're owed something. People who have academic entitlement, or they're higher in academic entitlement, they feel like they are owed grades even if they didn't necessarily put the work in for them. And so, I have been reading articles where people have linked entitlement, or tried to link entitlement to some of these 5 factors. And so agreeableness and conscientiousness have been linked in some studies. Excuse me, in some studies. All right, so I have not gone over everything in the chapter on personality, but we are getting to the part of the semester where we're running short on time. So I covered the most essential topics that you would need to learn about in an introductory course, a survey course in psychology. If you want to know more, we do have a 400 level course just called Personality, taught on my campus. There's definitely more you can learn, but that's what I'm going to go over for this introductory course.